Welcome to Bible Talk class. Very exciting topic we have today to share with you. Sex in marriage while praying. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 5. Kindly subscribe to this channel if you are yet to be a member of Bible Talk class. It's free of charge. Just press the red button and you receive wonderful videos from us about the Bible. Share the video that we have with you today and many others that we have prepared on the Bible with the world, with the church, your friends and family. And like this video and the rest of the videos that we have prepared. The more you like, the more the world will know that indeed we are here, and we are here for good, and we are here to do God's work, preparing the world for His second coming. Thank you very much for being a member of Bible Talk class. Let's begin. This topic is very interesting, and we are taking our passage from 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 5. It reads, "Do not deprive each other except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control." NIV. Now we have a series of questions to ask. First, does this mean sexual intercourse cannot happen between married couples when they agree to pray? To put it more broadly, is sexual intercourse between married couples an evil act while praying? Is this a command or advice that Paul gives here? So we're going to look at why this passage. Let's appreciate the context. The church of Corinth asked Paul if it was good for a man to have sex with a woman. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 1. Paul answered that it could be done only in marriage. In other words, sex can happen between married couples. He stressed that the husband and wife should not deny each other the right to sexual intercourse. Verse 4. There was a debate in the Corinthian church as to whether sex was okay for believers to engage in because Paul, their spiritual father, the one who established the church, was celibate, and other apostles such as Peter and John had wives. So the church members were confused. Whom should we follow? Whom should we aspire to become? Our spiritual father, Paul, is not married. And you have other notable apostles who are married. Is it religiously right to have sexual intercourse with a man if you're a woman, or with a woman if you're a man? This was a problem that Paul had to address. He plainly emphasized that sex in marriage was not sinful. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 36. It says there's nothing wrong having sex as married couples. Though marriage with its mandatory sexual intercourse commitment, but Paul makes clear that once you get married, you must have that commitment and that you should not deny your partner that sexual right. And so Paul makes clear that marriage is not sinful. Then he moves on to say that when couples are devoted to prayers, they should cease having sex. This is where the problem comes. So, is there anything wrong with sex in marriage when you are devoted to prayers? Let's respond to the question, why? Paul spoke within the context of a temporal devoted encounter with God as required in the Old Testament cultic services. In the Old Testament cultic services, there are cases that we find married couples being commanded to abstain from sex. Of course, one thing that comes to mind is Exodus chapter 19, verse 15. When God asked Israel to come to the mountain and listen to him, God said, "Do not have any sexual intercourse as you come before me." And there are many things. He told them not to touch the mountain or touch anything. So abstinence from sex was not the only restriction that was given. And the other rituals that we find in the Old Testament that also required abstinence from sex. Now, somehow the Jews appreciated that and extended to any religious devotion. So if you had some time set for yourself to engage God or engage in any rituals, then one had to abstain from sexual intercourse. And so that was the thinking of the Jews at the time. They extended these commandments in the Old Testament to other areas, any other religious commitment that required some devotion. And so Paul's advice parallels the testament of Naphtali, chapter 8, verse 8. And it reads, "There is a time for having intercourse with one's wife, and a time to abstain from the purpose of prayer." Naphtali is an apocryphal Jewish literature dated around AD 200. Of course, the writing started some years back, but in AD 200, everything had been finalized. The final text had been established by AD 200. And so the point is that it was a normal Jewish thinking that once you devote some time for yourself to engage God in any ritual or any religious activity, you must abstain from having sex with your wife as a man. And so that was the thinking. And Paul seemed to have entertained this thinking. Remember that 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 5 says that the husband and the wife will abstain from sexual intercourse in this hour of devotion. So the text is not saying that only the husband can decide when he wants to have some time with God and therefore he will deny the wife, or the wife will deny the husband of his right to sexual intercourse because she has decided to have some time with God. The passage is not saying that. The passage is saying the two of them must agree to devote some time to prayer and abstain from sexual intercourse. So the two must agree. That's the point that Paul is making. Now the words, and I want us to follow this carefully. Verse 5b, it reads, "In order that you might devote yourselves to prayer." These words indicate a special religious time as opposed to any other prayer time. So this is only for special devotion, for a day or 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days of prayer time that the husband and wife have decided to engage God during this period. This is what the text is saying. In short, we are saying that Paul is not advising against marital sexual intercourse before or after any other prayer. Instead, his advice is restricted to the mutual decision of the couple to devote some time to engaging God and denying themselves of any pleasurable acts and sensations. And so here one can appreciate that fasting may be telescoped here. So prayer and fasting may be what Paul is talking about here as religious devotion. And therefore you deny yourself of any pleasurable acts and sensations. So food is one of the things that one has to deny oneself of, and also sex, according to Paul's restriction here. This denial may be indicative of the value placed on the petition, and that is why you deny yourself of any pleasurable acts and sensations. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 6 reads, and I want us to pay attention to this passage carefully. Paul says, "I say this as a concession, not as a command." NIV. In verse 6, by using this demonstrative pronoun this, Paul emphasizes that his statement regarding abstinence is a concession, not a command. Again, in verse 6, by using this demonstrative pronoun, this, Paul emphasizes that his statement regarding abstinence is a concession, not a command. Therefore, a married couple can decide to abstain or not when they are in a devoted prayer mood. I hope you have understood this presentation, and we patiently and happily await your response, your comments, your questions. Thank you very much for staying with us, and we believe you will share this message with the world and help people to understand what the Bible says. We appreciate you so much. God bless you.
Hold fast till I come, the danger is great. Sleep not as do others, be watchful and wait. Hold fast till I come, sweet promise of them. The kingdom restored to you shall begin. Come enter my joy.